One of the biggest phrases in football is always the talk about how a team can improve greatly between week 1 and week 2. Well, the Browns look really good in week 1. Now they're headed to week 2, Monday Night Football against Pittsburgh. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Pete Smith along for the ride.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Floyd, joined today by Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. To the everyday crowd that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, make sure you join it by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And, of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Closing out the week here. Normally, look, Friday episode, pregame show, but we'll be back. You'll get a pregame show Sunday into Monday. We'll have all that covered. Right now, there's still not much to talk about. Obviously, Browns released their first injury report. Nothing glaring yet to me, in my opinion, although Juan Thornhill, who was warming up Sunday in hopes of playing, still is not back on the practice field. Thursday, the Browns do have the added luxury of having Rodney McLeod. So we'll see how that plays out. Browns practice Friday, Browns practice Saturday. Pete Smith, obviously, Browns Digest, Sports Illustrated, in for the ride. Pete, the old phrase, the amount of improvement between week 1 and week 2, and we'll stick here with the offensive side of the ball first. And look, there was meat left on the bone. There was no question about that. And, Deshaun, I would say it was about maybe the first 27, 28 minutes, but he took that shot and got hit in the ribs, kind of got hit maybe a little bit below the chin. All of a sudden, it kind of seemed like a wake-up call for Deshaun. Like, he really picked it up a little bit from that point on. Obviously got it to 10-0 at half. And then, of course, the Browns kind of had their way with the Bengals in the second half.
Well, I think initially, early in the game, he was dropping his eyes quite a bit and not seeing the field very well, which got better. And I think in terms of working the pocket, I think he made some questionable decisions, including that play you're referring to. If he just sat in the pocket and was patient, that check down option would have been there for him, but he decided to try to step up and climb, and then he got whacked both sides of his body in the ribs. So certainly I think he can get a lot better, but I do think as the game wore on, I saw a lot that suggests that that's going to happen if the weather were better. The ball coming out of his hand cleaner. I think there were a lot of plays, because my big comparison from that game was like Joe Burrow was struggling to throw the ball, but every throw he was throwing, for the most part, there was a Browns defensive back in the hip pocket of the receiver. Deshaun Watson was missing balls that were just wide open. They were coming out of his hand like a cinder block. But to your point, he had that great drive before the half. They score on the trap. There's a lot there. The other guy that sort of jumps out to me as an opportunity to get a lot better is Jerome Ford. Looked like Kareem Hunt did basically all of last year, save for the one run, because Kareem Hunt can't run that far anymore. And then as he gets more comfortable, I think that becomes a better option. I was really happy the Browns kept feeding him to try to find that comfort level, and ultimately he broke through with that big run. Because if that comes together, it's going to take some more pressure off Chubb. There was no, that would have been a game last year where people were sitting there whining about carries and everything, and Chubb got plenty of them, but they need to have somebody to be able to take some of the load off.
And with Jerome, and I thought it was the due diligence part of it is, hey, he missed everything. So you know what? Look, we can get it all back here right now, because at that point, for the most part, the game was a blowout anyway. So we were getting Jerome the work he needed. There is a major adjustment, Pete, obviously coming now for this team, starting this week in practice, and will culminate on Monday Night Football. Dwan Jones is now this team's right tackle for the foreseeable future, at least as far as 2023 is concerned. Obviously, tough break for Jack Conklin. But this was a weird scenario. Like, once the summer ended and the preseason games ended, he was like, well, here's one of the best stories basically of the summer. And we have no idea necessarily when we're going to see the guy again, or, how does he keep up and keep improving? But, obviously, the other, the line, these things sometimes work, have a tendency of working themselves out. But DeJuan Jones, your time is here. Your time is now.
Yeah. So considering the circumstances, he was outstanding, stepping in there. And he's good at pass protection. I mean, he's legitimately good. I think it helps he was going against the likes of Sam Hubbard. They didn't really have a great other option. Trey Hendrickson's a phenomenal defensive end. They don't really have that next guy because they're missing Osai due to injury, and they're still waiting on Miles Murphy to sort of become a player. So that helped. It gave him a little bit of a runway to work on. The problem is he's not a very good run blocker, and that may never happen, but at the very least, it's going to be a struggle for him now. But if you're going to choose one or the other, you're going to embrace the pass protection and be like, we're fine. Just keep pass protecting, and they can do things to sort of supplement the run. They can use David Njoku. They could put James Hudson out there as an extra tight end if they want to. Whatever they want to do, but their big concern is protect the passer, and obviously I think it's in their best interest to provide some extra help and those type of things. But as long as he continues being consistent in that realm, they'll figure out how to run the ball. Ultimately, the way their offense runs, certainly it's nice when your tackles can run block. Jack Conklin's a very good run blocker. But the guards are doing the work in this offense, so you can make that work.
And now, Pete, this just has to be something as far as his body type, right? I mean, because, one of the biggest things, and what you see with Teller, what you see with Tonio, as well as they've been able to do this for the years that they've been here within this system, obviously their guards and DeJuan's a tackle, it's just kind of hard to sink low when you're that big and, get yourself to max speed. He is smart enough to understand to use his length and all these things. But this is kind of just, one of the things you love how big he is as far as his pass pro ability, but it's going to be something that could always be a work in progress as far as his run blocking.
Well, I mean, they didn't use it much last week, but like most people were citing concerns about him being an outside zone guy. Well, they didn't run outside zone really much last week. It was all counters. Nevertheless, you still got to hit and adjust to moving targets. That can be a little tricky, but I think ultimately that's an area where he could be pretty good. I mean, if he gets good at down blocking, he's a problem. I mean, he's 374 pounds. He gets you moving, you're going to stay moving. So that's where I think he can improve, and some of that may just be a comfort thing. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, the opponent has athletes, and they're not going to just be content to be blocked. So they may find ways around it. So you look for those improvements, but as long as he can continue to be a good pass blocker and succeed on that end, you'll be just fine with what he offers.
Yeah, I mean, unless, and there's, if DeJuan Jones is in your vicinity, there's probably just this, innate part of your brain that says, well, I am not going to let this man who is 6'8", 375 pounds, basically bury me right here in the turf in Cleveland Browns Stadium. We're going to switch it up here. We're going to go to the defense. And I know this is what I'm excited to continue to talk about. I know Pete's probably excited about it. The fruition of how it really just came together so quickly. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Stick around, segment 2 coming up next. Prize picks. Look, me and my family, my wife, my girls, they love to go to shows. But the problem is coordinating schedules of 2 teenage girls and a mom who works a lot. That's what makes Game Time so freaking great. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Just a couple of weekends ago, there's 2 venues right near us, have great seating, but also offer lawn seating. Problem was the weather was suspect. My wife didn't know what to do. They went in, they subbed out the tickets they had, got the ticket. It's under. Granted, the weather still held out, but these are things you can do with Game Time. Flash deals, last-minute tickets. You get images of your seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc., etc. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy the tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen. And the Everyday Crowd just keeps on growing. Subscribe to the YouTube page and join the Everyday Crowd. Of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free. Pete, I've been here hosting this show since the 2017 season. You have been a guest on this show too many times than anybody could probably even count. And the amount of times we talked about defensive tackle play and how important defensive tackle play is in basically, working unison with defensive end play. But there was always this problem for all of these years. The Browns never had any. And now you're starting to see it. You're starting to see it all come to fruition. The length, the depth. Myles Garrett was just as strong in the fourth quarter as he was in the first quarter because he's not overworked. He's not overtaxed. Pete, it was like a hallelujah moment Sunday, kind of watching the way this all went down.
Yeah, it looked professional. Dalvin Tomlinson, certainly an impactful player. You see him on the pass rush and how devastating he can be. Shelby Harris was really, really effective as a run stopper. They have depth beyond that can help out. The linebackers were able to operate like you'd like to see linebackers operate, not having to take on guard blocks, not having to deal with a bunch of trash, because they could just fly around and make plays. And what you saw was JOK flying in the backfield to take on contact and force things back inside, like you want your linebackers to be able to do. Being able to just play faster, blitz effectively, just do all those things because you're, one, able to stop, you can stop the run and put the opponent in more obvious passing situations. And then two, when you do that, you get to use them to do other things. They don't have to constantly, they're not playing both at that point. It's 3rd and 11. The Bengals aren't running the ball. You get to focus on coverage or blitz or whatever. So it's everything that you would like it to be. And not surprisingly, it's a major reason the Browns defense looks completely different than it has in previous years. You've had an element you haven't had on this team. And, basically since Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson, but they're better. They're better than those guys were. And there's no reason to believe they can't continue to be better than, moving forward.
In terms of Myles Garrett, Pete, we've talked for years, and we always use the phrase, find the turd. Well, Jim Schwartz didn't wait very long. And, it was fun because I think the thing is Jim Schwartz, went to Myles and said, man, look, this is something you can truly have fun with. I want you to make it your own. And you saw it. You found the turd. And I still love the right guard giving him the tap to the Bengals center, basically saying, look, I'm blocking out, man. Whatever's about to happen here, this is all on you. And, I think we all watched the setup and we were all wondering exactly how it was going to go down. But when you get capable players around a superstar talent like Myles Garrett, you can dig into a bag of tricks.
Well, the mere fact that you could have 4 defensive linemen on the field that didn't make you panic, that allowed Myles Garrett to line up as a linebacker, is all you need to know. That you were that good, that you have this freedom to use arguably the best defensive lineman in the league to just do this. So that just gives you a whole bunch of other options, and Jim Schwartz didn't waste any time being able to play around with it, not only using him as a linebacker, but getting in that 50 front and just terrorizing it. And that forced the rate of double teams to drop by almost 10% compared to last year, which is certainly a benefit. And he had, the combination of Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith had 12 pressures total by PFF's grading. And just, I think overall, the Browns' pressure rate was like 36.1% on game, which is pretty good. I think for the 49ers were slightly higher, like 42% against the Steelers. So you're constantly generating pressure. And to your point, because I think one of the things that gets underrated is, Myles Garrett, I think somewhat fairly, but also a little wrongly, is his gas tank. I think we underestimate just how taxing it is to constantly face double and sometimes triple teams over and over and over again, and then expect him to be able to keep playing
And
at that
catching a
high
chip in the
level.
ribs and all of that stuff. Exactly.
So I think we're going to see over the course, and this was one game, and one, I give Jim Schwartz credit because he was willing to rotate guys. Not a single player on the Browns played 100%. Like normally your corners are always on the field. Nobody played 100%. But I think over time, that because they have a strong rotation, they don't need Myles Garrett to play himself out of gas, and then he can be, as effective in the fourth quarter as he's the first, which still sells short the idea that like people want to criticize and say, well, Myles Garrett doesn't make plays in the fourth quarter. Like we completely forget the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Saw it last year, the Buccaneers game, that Myles can close out a game. Like it was a weird criticism that never, held any water for me because we've seen it over and over and over again. But people like to conveniently forget because the Browns are losing that somehow that's got to be somebody's fault, and somehow that becomes Myles, the best defensive player in football, arguably, and a future Hall of Famer on your team, must be his fault, despite the fact he's clearly still doing these things that people say he isn't doing.
We have to talk secondary because it was a masterful effort, and obviously all of them, you kind of got their credit. All of them got their kudos. Whether it was the corners, whether it was Grant Delpit, obviously, during the week, everybody was so highly anticipating Juan Thornhill, his debut, and obviously we're still waiting on when Juan Thornhill's debut will be. And we've talked about where it's always been slow starts for Grant Delpit. Obviously, year 2 coming off the Achilles and still getting acclimated to playing in the NFL. A little banged up out of the gate last year. But you saw him healthy. You saw him confident. And, Pete, you saw him in a role that you've been screaming he was capable of doing since the day the Browns drafted him.
Sorry, who is that?
That would be Grant Delpit?
Yes. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Grant Delpit got to play every role. He played free safety. He played strong safety. He played the slot. Obviously, the biggest play of the game to me is the pass breakup again. Covering T. Higgins in the slot. Like you talk, that's teach tape in terms of like eye discipline and everything else. And to have your eyes on the receiver the whole way and then punch it out the way he did was like all pro type stuff. Like that was the game changing play, because think about it. At that point in the game, it's 10-3. It's 3rd and 5. It's the matchup you have to go after too. That's what the Bengals would have dreamed for to have, is either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase on a safety in the slot. They got exactly what they wanted, and Grant Delpit just said, no, this isn't happening, and made the play of the game. So he did that. He blitzed. He timed it up beautifully to force a pressure. He got a tackle for loss. Every time he went to go and make a tackle, he hit it. And not only did he hit it short of the sticks. It was like the best game he's played, and he's had a couple of good games. But like you watch him and you're like, this is finally what we've been waiting for. Peak of his powers, Grant Delpit. He, to me, obviously this game comes down to like, you're going to look at this, go Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith on the defensive line. You're going to be like, those are your dudes. And the corners get your share of credit. But nobody was better than Grant Delpit in that game. There may have been guys on the same level as Grant Delpit, but nobody was better. And like, if he keeps playing like this, we're going to have that conversation, because a lot of people are like, well, they're not going to be able to keep Grant Delpit. But if he does things like this, that's going to be a conversation that comes up. Obviously too early now, but if he wants to play like this the whole year, it's going to be really difficult to be like, we'll find somebody who can do all of these things.
Well, if you have the toolbox, you have the toolbox. And that is one thing that Grant Delpit showed everybody Sunday. And we start transition here, obviously, to Monday night. We're going to get to a little bit about Steelers with Pete. Everybody stick around as we close out here the week and, of course, the episode on Locked On Browns. As everybody knows, I've been through a lot here the last few years personally, losing my father. I lose my brother and my father within an 11-month span. And you have to understand that sometimes you need to be the best version of yourself for yourself, but for everybody else within your life. A great way to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk through them. Therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental clarity and peace. For me, talking about it and understanding that these two guys were so so instrumental in my life, but so I was so close with. It wasn't the fact that I was just close with them, was the fact that these were the people I went to and saw guidance from. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest, most and exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Me personally, I love to do the primetime games, whether it's Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. Y'all know you're tuning in anyway. So head, put together a lineup. So Prize Picks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. Quick withdrawals, easy game plan, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, segment 3 here, your latest Locked On Browns. Pete, so much of this game coming up here on Monday Night Football, for me, it seems so simple, so easy for this team. Obviously, you're figuring in Deontay Johnson injury, figuring in, obviously, the Cam Hayward injury, Pickett not looking good. But in the same respect, as much as this looks so appealing, man, this would be an utter black hole with all the history that's being talked about if they cannot find a way to walk out of there with that W.
You look at how the Browns won on Sunday and you look at how the Steelers lost on Sunday, and you put those two things together, there's no way to get around the fact that losing this game would be a letdown. I mean, it's certainly not the end of the world, but it would just be a letdown because the Browns fan base, even in that game, home opener, there were a lot of Bengals fans in that stadium. And there were a lot of 49ers fans in that Steelers stadium. But if they win, good luck getting a ticket to the Tennessee Titans game coming back. Like it's a powder keg waiting to explode if the Browns can take advantage of this. And they have so many advantages in this game. Basically it comes down to the way they lose this game is that the Steelers run the ball at a really high level and that they cause turnovers on defense. I don't see how the Steelers are going to pass the ball effectively on this team. They have to be able to stay on schedule. They have to be able to utilize play action and do those things. But they struggle to protect Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's down arguably his top receiver in Deontay Johnson. If they play defense even at a semblance of the level they did last week, they're going to have a massive advantage on that side of the ball. And it really comes down to, can the offense move the ball against a Cameron Hayward-less Steelers defense? And I think that's a bigger factor than people want to acknowledge. Yep. I think Cameron Hayward's going to end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But Keanu Benton was great, but is he ready for a full load? And then what happens behind him? Their depth is not going to be tested. Now, the problem you run into is that T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith are going to attack what is arguably the Browns' biggest weakness on offense, which is their offensive tackles. Now, they can play around that, but, if those guys go off or Minkah Fitzpatrick makes a big impact in this game, they start turning over the ball, that's where this has the potential to be a trap. I mean, I still have a really difficult time not seeing the Browns pull this out, but it's a divisional game, and those can get weird, as we just saw this past week.
And this is all part of the premise that, the way the schedule was, drawn up and the way it was, when it was released, is there was a really good opportunity here for the Browns to make some hay early and kind of run away and hide. Step 1 complete. We'll see if step 2 can be completed Monday night in Pittsburgh. And for the Steelers, for you to start the season with 2 home games, and granted, both opponents were tough, but to start your season 0-2, but 0-2 at home, really, really makes it difficult. And you can talk about maybe one team having a really, really difficult time finding a way to compete in the AFC North for the rest of 2023. He is Pete Smith. Check everything out over at Browns Digest. Of course, check out the podcast. Pete and his team are doing a fantastic job here. So make sure you check it all out. Make sure you're following at _Pete Smith _ as well. Myself, Jeff Lloyd. You guys know it's now 7 years with you all here on Locked On Browns. I appreciate every one of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Jump in the pool. The water's warm. Join the everyday crowd by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And, of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. We will have it probably be Sunday, after supper time or whatever, but you will get your Locked On Browns pregame show, and I will go into detail on some of my favorite matchups to watch for Monday Night Football, score prediction, and it's going to be the same as it was last week. I'm just telling you all right now. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.